Hello, it's Nicolette, and I have been living in France for 1 year. Actually, it's been 1 year and 2 months now, which is absolutely wild because it really does feel like I just got here a few months ago. But when I think back to who I was and where I was a year ago, so much has changed. So I thought that I would do a little 1 year update and talk about why I moved to France, what some of the challenges have been thus far, some of the positive things, and also a few tips for anyone else who is looking to move abroad. Okay, let's get into it. The biggest question I get asked by friends back home, but also especially French people, is why did I move to France? I have always been obsessed with France and the French language and French culture, French films. So always in the back of my mind, I knew that I wanted at some point in my life to live in France. It wasn't until I'd say 2.5 years ago that I really started getting serious about how I could do that. After doing some research, I found that the best way for me seemed like applying to master's programs and moving to France on a student visa. So currently I am living in the south of France and I am attending a 2-year art program, which is the equivalent of a master's program in the US. I'm not gonna lie, the application process was pretty difficult, mainly because everything was in French and I really had a difficult time finding information from the point of view of an international student, an American student who was applying to these programs from abroad. Also, all of my interviews with schools were at like 2 or 3 in the morning because of the time difference. So that was a whole other thing that I had to deal with. Another question I get asked a lot is, why not Paris? Well, first off, my choices were limited to cities that actually had master's programs for fine art. I did get accepted to a school in Paris, but when it really came down to deciding, I realized that after spending 10 years of my life in a big city in Los Angeles, I was really ready for something a little smaller, something more calm and quiet, and Toulouse really seemed like the best decision. But it's not as big and crowded and touristy as Paris is. It's also significantly cheaper than Paris. So actually, if you're considering moving to France, I would really encourage you to not just look at Paris. I know Paris is the most well-known city in France. Maybe Paris is perfect for you, but I really encourage you to look at other cities, other parts of France, because there might be something even better suited for you. Okay, now for the challenges, because let me tell you, there have been a lot. In my opinion, the biggest challenge has been the language barrier. I arrived in France knowing a decent amount of French. I was required to take the TCF, which is a French exam, and score like at least a B2 level in French. But knowing French for an exam is very different than using French in your day-to-day life. I think I really underestimated the energy and brain power it takes to live in a second language. I still remember the first day I went to school, we had this 2.5-hour meeting where it was just professors and administrators like speaking at you for 2.5 hours. They were saying all these important dates and deadlines and information. By the end of the meeting, I went home and was so exhausted and really, I just started questioning everything. I was like, what did I do? What did I sign myself up for? I don't think I'm ready for this. Having your brain in foreign language mode for a whole day gets tiring. A whole nother layer to this is that when I was figuring out how to get an apartment, or I was on the phone with the energy company, or trying to open a bank account, all of this stuff that normally is pretty annoying and complicated was a whole other level of complicated because it was not in my native language. There was one time recently when I think that someone was saying something about like going through a breakup. Like I only realized it after I left and I had just been like smiling and nodding, and then I walked away from the conversation and was like, oh, I think that they were telling me that they'd just broken up with their boyfriend. So, sometimes that elicits a very inappropriate response, but I'd say that happens like once a month. The second biggest challenge has been the loneliness and isolation that can come with moving abroad alone. When I first came here, I had never been to the city before. I knew absolutely no one here, and I was living alone for the first time in my life. Not only was I moving to another country, to a city I had never been to, where I knew no one, I was also experiencing living without roommates for the first time. The first, I'd say, 2 months here were pretty lonely. I was having a good time, I was exploring the city, I was having fun, but it was alone. Also, because of the time zone, I couldn't be phoning my family or friends back home until maybe like 5 p.m. So I would go through my whole day and not even be able to reach out to someone back home. Once I started school and kind of felt situated there, I was able to make a lot of friends, so I'm really grateful for that. Also, I started reaching out to other expats and meeting people who would also move to France, and that was something we could bond over. So if you're moving to another country or even just another city where you don't know anyone, I really encourage you to go to events or clubs or meetups where you can meet people who share a similar interest or hobby. And I know it can be really intimidating, trust me, especially if you're meeting people and making friends in a totally different language, but it is so worth it. And I've made so many great friends. Yeah, I'm so thankful for that. Moving to France has definitely been the biggest decision I've ever made, but also one of the most rewarding ones. My day-to-day life has changed, obviously, but also I think my priorities and my outlook on life has all drastically shifted. I just appreciate kind of day-to-day things more, and I'm moving a lot slower and not feeling as rushed. You know, the French in general, especially the south of France, they know how to do the healthy work-life balance thing, okay? They go on vacation for a whole summer, they're having wine on a terrace at 6 p.m. Like, they know how to do this. So that's definitely rubbed off. When I was living in the US, I was such a workaholic. I was very sleep deprived, and I was always putting work as the number one thing, which in hindsight was really unhealthy. Like here during lunch breaks, for example, if you go to a park, it is filled with business people having relaxing 2-hour-long lunches, sitting on a bench with coworkers. I just feel like that's something you don't see really in the US. Everyone's, doing their like working lunch, eating at their desk. That doesn't happen here really. Also, moving to France has honestly made me feel like I'm on vacation every single day. Like even when I'm working, even when I'm going to school, it still in some way feels like I'm on vacation. Moving abroad will not solve all your problems, but it will give them a new setting, some new scenery. And also, being in the south of France, I'm able to so easily visit other towns and regions. I went to the Mediterranean Sea for the first time. I went to the Pyrenees. I visited a ton of beautiful towns in the south of France. And all of these were just day trips on the train. So definitely the close proximity to other cities and even countries is so incredible and something that I don't think I'm ever gonna get over. Like, wow. But the fact that I don't need to hop on a plane to go to Italy, mind-blowing. And it's not just that you can physically take a train to another country. I think one of the things I love about being in France is that it is so diverse. Even just at my school alone, there are so many international students. There are people from Italy, Germany, Russia, China, South America, like so many people from different countries, different cultures. You just like walk down the hall and you can hear like 4 different languages in the span of a minute. As someone who is trying to learn multiple languages right now, that's been cool too, to know that someone sitting next to me in class, I can practice Italian or practice Spanish. And yeah, that's something that I really have loved since moving here. Moving abroad was probably the biggest decision I've made in my life. It really did feel like I was starting over, that I was getting rid of everything familiar in my life. And in a way it was. I was 29 years old and I was at an age where it felt like everyone around me was getting married or buying a house, having children, getting promoted at work, all these things that were significant life steps and building upon something. And I was here making a decision that was really the complete opposite of that. I left a city that I had lived in for 10 years. I had gone to school there, I had built a career there in the film industry, and I had all my friends there. And I felt like I was deciding to get rid of all of that. There were times when I wondered if I was making a really stupid decision. But really, in my heart, I felt like this is what I needed to do, what I really, truly wanted to do, and I don't regret any of it. As cheesy as it sounds, I really do wake up every morning and I am so happy with where I am. Not only literally and physically, but in a more like metaphorical way as well. I feel like moving here has helped me get in touch with a more authentic version of myself. I think forcing myself to strip away everything that was familiar forced me to really look deeper and find what was left, what was true, what was authentic. There were days when I was really lonely or really anxious or just really exhausted with it all, but at the end of the day, it's been so totally worth it. If you're thinking about moving abroad, I really encourage you to ask yourself the question, am I ready for this? When you move abroad, you're never gonna be the same person again. And that's really scary. And you know, it's not for everyone. And that's totally okay. If you realize that really what you want is just a few weeks every year abroad or a few months every year abroad, totally fine. But some people, like myself, realize that really what they want is that huge, massive life change. Are you okay with being uncomfortable? Are you okay with newness, with a break in your routine, of maybe never even returning to your routine? Are you okay with being alone sometimes? Are you okay with meeting new people, making new friends, discovering new places? These are the questions that you really need to ask yourself. And if the answer is yes, and you do move abroad, I hope that it is a rewarding, exciting experience and that you get closer to a more authentic, real, happy version of yourself. Well, I'm gonna wrap this video up because I have no clue how long it's gonna be. If there are other videos or topics you want me to cover, please let me know in the comments and give this video a little thumbs up. Really does help with the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe for more. That's all for now. Au revoir.